So welcome everybody. Thank you for being excited to talk policy on today, the first day of the government shutdown. Um, we know nothing more than the rest of you. So if anybody's got great updates, please drop them in the chat. But mostly we're just really going to be talking about what the regenerative policy initiative is, what our short-term priorities are going to be, and then having a tiny bit of time at the end for you guys to give us some feedback, as well as to what would help support your work, because that is what we are primarily here to do. So with that, we're going to share. Aisha, I'm going to make you co-host real quick, just so if people keep coming in, you can let them in, because I can't see when I'm screen sharing. Um,
Sounds
and with that, let me share screen. Perry, no worries. Yes, everybody's tech is being super weird this week. I've been having a fight with my laptop since last Thursday. So also, if you just don't want to stare at yourself on screen, feel free to flip it off and we're happy to keep going. Okay, we're sharing. Can you guys see that? Okay, great. Sorry, I am not used to using the Google as much. Okay, who are we? I think you know Aisha, myself, and Erica. Um, we'll just do super quick introductions. Jessica Hulse-Dillon. I'm the Senior Director of the Soil and Climate Alliance. This new regenerative policy initiative is living under our broader umbrella. And we will dive a little bit more into SCA in just a quick minute, but we serve to hold the space around learning, engagement, and action to scaling regenerative across the regenerative system across the country. Eric and Aisha, do you want to do super quick intros as well?
sure. Aish Holly, good to see a lot of familiar faces on the call and meet anyone new. I am co-founder of In Common Group with Erica Campbell here, and we work on a variety of food systems projects. But we first started working together, and one of our deep loves is policy. So happy to be back in this conversation.
Yep, and Erica Campbell from In Common Group. And Jessica, would it be possible if we could, since it's a small group today, could we do a really quick round robin?
Absolutely. Love that idea.
Awesome. Great.
And
Okay. Do you want to do the passing around?
why don't you let's popcorn it. So Erica, why don't you start and we'll just go from there. And Perry, don't worry that your camera's being cranky today.
Cool. I think I already went. Erica Campbell,
Yes.
own In Common Group, and I will pass it over to Elizabeth.
Elizabeth Candelario, Mad Agriculture. And I will pass it to Susan.
Susan Enfield. I'm currently with CDA on climate smart markets, but I'm actually transitioning this week, and I will start working at New Hope Network, which covers a lot of this stuff. So I just thought I would tune in. I haven't been at a lot of meetings lately, but I am very interested.
Yeah. And Susan, I don't know if you already have your New Hope address, or once you get it, just ping it over to us so we can add it to the list.
Fantastic. I would.
Thanks. Oh, and popcorn it to somebody.
Oh, I have it minimized, so I'm not
Oh.
seeing everyone. How about Don?
Hello, I'm Don Baselli. I'm in Chicago. I'm part of the Climate Reality Project. I chair the Regenerative Agriculture Coalition. We're focused on the Farm Bill.
You want to hand it off to somebody then?
I'll pass to Sandy.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sandy Briggs. I work for the city of Boulder, Colorado. I'm the co-chair of the Colorado Composting Council, and I'm also the vice chair of the United States Composting Council's Legislative and Environmental Affairs Committee. So glad to be here. Oops, failed. Callie.
Hi, thank you. Oh, let me move my thumb out of the screen there. Callie Eiderberg, with the Vogel Group, where we do consulting with a lot of different clients in the food and agriculture space. And I have a couple of clients who are very, very interested in regenerative ag and what it means for their business and the policy angle here. So here just to learn more, in case they're interested. Thank you. And I can't see any names here.
Perry's the
So
last one
Perry.
down.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Carrie Kaler. I live in Menlo Park, California. I am, like Don, part of the Climate Reality Project. I am on the Regenerative Ag Coalition, and I run a regenerative ag team in the San Francisco Bay Area.
Great idea, Erica. And again, this is super conversational. Yes, we're going to do slides, but that's just because we're visual people. Please feel free. I see some, drop things in the chat if you have questions. If you want, like, if we're talking about something and you want to jump in and add some great intel or something, just flag a hand, just because we don't always see things when we're presenting, but we definitely want this to be an interactive session today. So, all right. With that, you guys are going to make me prove that I can do this again. All right, hold on. All right, we got some slides. And with that, we're RPI. This is us. Yay. What are we? Many of you were engaged with Regenerate America. There's been some shifts in how Kiss the Ground is approaching the work, and the Soil and Climate Alliance, as well as Erica and Aisha at In Common. Policy is one of the key levers that we need to be able to engage with to advance regenerative transition and support regenerative growth. So we really think that it is incredibly important to keep this work moving. In addition to this work being led by Erica, Aisha, and myself, we will also be supported by an advisory council. We're still working on who all is going to be a part of that group, so we will share that as soon as that's finalized. If you would like to be more in depth and join that council, please reach out to one of us. We'd love to chat about it. We anticipate the advisory council meeting once a month for the next sort of 6-ish months. We're looking at sort of short-term versus long-term planning. And then in addition to that, the first Wednesday of every month, we'll have an update call. We anticipate a lot of things happening through the fall. So just having that on our calendars, and we'll be sending out standing invites later this week after this call. Just will give us that quick place to check in, update each other. We'll have a section for if you've got updates you're hearing, or pieces specifically from your work you want to highlight, really making sure that we're all engaging and collaborating together. So just to really frame how this group is going to talk about regenerative, and this stems entirely from the Soil and Climate Alliance. As I said, we are a thought leader network. We sit at the intersection of food and agriculture, and we bring everybody into this big tent. The biggest thing I want to make sure that we are all grounded in is when we talk about regenerative, that is what happens as soon as you step off that conventional pathway. Regenerative underlies, the non-GMO space, which was sort of a proxy for soil health for so long, in and through organic, in and through regenerative organic, in and through biodynamic. It's really creating that baseline for all of us to come together so that we can A, grow an alternative system, but B, that also give us the strength to counter the conventional system rather than infighting among ourselves. And we welcome everybody into this space. You could be coming in because of soil health or climate resilience or food security or nutrient density or the human health connections, all of which fall, everything on here is work that we do in the Soil and Climate Alliance, but you're welcome into this group. So if you know of others who broadly, are sort of touching in but want to be engaged, this is a space for all of us. Aisha, what are we actually going to be looking at in this work together?
Yeah, so we are envisioning sort of a three-pronged approach, if you will. And a lot of that is going to be pretty informal and iterative as we start building this out. As Jessica said, we're really looking at this to be a conversation that we're having, not a, this is the direction that we have in mind and we have everything dotted and crossed. But the three buckets that we're looking at are convening and collaborating, educating and engaging elected officials, and educating, mobilizing constituents, and go into a little more depth on the following slides about what that looks like as we're currently thinking about it. So for convening and collaborating, One of the big strengths that Regenerate America had was that it really brought together a breadth of partners from across the supply chain, across the systems, and even some folks who were sort of unlikely allies to regenerative policy and practices. So we're looking to just continue building out networks that bring in any kind of aligned partner that wants to work on short and long-term priorities. This is everything from the Farm Bill to appropriations to, immediate, so, sign-on letters to other kinds of legislation like the pesticide shield bills that are going through some states right now. So really just working on a variety of different priorities that will ultimately protect and expand funding to support regenerative transitions across the system and regenerative practices taking place. Also looking to just have some space for knowledge sharing and resource sharing. I know there's a lot of networks out there that do similar work, so this isn't looking to be duplicative or redundant, but just making sure that if there's people that aren't being reached, that aren't part of those networks, that this is yet another avenue for getting them on board and making sure they have all the updates and resources that we do, and hearing from them about their scope of work in their corners of the area. Educating and engaging elected officials is a major bucket that we are thinking about strategically and trying to navigate. It's a very different landscape than it was last year in terms of what's on the table for the Farm Bill or anything else, and Eric will be talking about that in a moment. But we know that in general, policy doesn't stop. Even though it might seem like things are at a standstill or like there is just a real blockade happening around some of the priorities that we've had in previous years, ultimately connecting with elected officials is still how we're going to get things moved forward. There's a lot of opportunity to have things happen in the background, actually, when attention isn't necessarily brightly spotlighting you. So a couple of things that we're considering right now is just putting out policy briefs, making sure farmer stories really still get highlighted. And one really central thing under this current political landscape is continuing to really center climate and equity issues as key aspects of regenerative systems. It's something that is, quite blatantly under attack by the current administration in terms of talking about either of those two pieces. And under the SCA umbrella and framework, and as Eric and I understand regenerative agriculture and practices, those are both really central pillars. So making sure that that is still being highlighted and forefronted. Continue to advance policy proposals and bills. There's some more that Eric will share about that. And then just, again, the continued engagement with other players across the food system to be collaborative and cross-coordinate. And the last part that is something that we really want to talk with you all about as part of the conversation is what the work looks like when it comes to educating and mobilizing constituents. This is something that we've worked on a lot in the past without a clear understanding of what was going to be happening with the Farm Bill, and that's still up for debate. There hasn't been quite as much engagement possible, but we really want to be able to work with partners to continue educating consumers and encouraging them to reach out to members. So working with partners, working with other groups out there to develop public facing content from policy briefs and updates to analysis. Looking at really honestly what's happening with the current administration and the USDA and looking at the strategies that they're putting forth and seeing what the impacts of that's going to be, how we can either maximize it and catalyze it, or if there are, adjustments that we think need to be made, and being very upfront about that and putting that out there as a proposal that, certain things need funding if we're really going to invest in regen, or, we need to pay attention to what's happening in certain sectors and not just let it get swept away under higher level strategies or talking points. Developing CTAs, and then also looking at things like toolkits and digital trainings when there's really focused activations that are coming up. We're happy to continue creating the resources that we have in the past and making them available for partners, and just really collaborating on what's needed right now in the space. So we'll be looking for insight on that.
Oops. There we go. Oh, back there. Well, I was just doing a quick check on my phone to see if, we're still in a shutdown. And I saw that Jane Goodall passed away. I hadn't seen that earlier today. So
Yeah.
that's just very, very sad. And I think we can all recognize her amazingness. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I wanted to just give a very quick overview. And I know many of you are very engaged with Farm Bill and appropriations. We've got Callie on the line who, you know, she was our go-to when she was the lead of conservation and on the Senate Agriculture Committee. So got lots of expertise in this room, but in short, the reconciliation bill passed earlier this year included a lot of Farm Bill programming, but there's certainly a lot that's left out. So, with the December 31st kind of deadline of the last extension of the Farm Bill, we will need to think how we're going to make sure that those programs are not left hanging. There are lots of bills continuing to be introduced, but I don't know. It's really hard to know if we're going to have a farm bill this year, a smaller version of a farm bill. If I was a betting person, I would probably say no, but it really, I think, unknown at this point. Appropriations. I mean, obviously, I think everybody knows we're in a federal shutdown. These can last a day to, I don't know, Kelly, you probably know better than I, but I think they've lasted over a month in the past, and the longer they go, the more impact they have, because this is going to really impact just even on the USDA side. We're talking, thousands and thousands of workers. I think I heard maybe over 40,000 workers potentially furloughed. So even though some of the programs technically keep, yeah, I agree, Callie. Yeah, and that the shutdown is long. Oh, yeah. So I mean, this would be an interesting conversation, just like around what the longer the shutdown goes, what that means. Because offices may close, county FSA offices, and NRCS will be losing furloughing a bunch of staff. So like signups and moving money out the door, certainly grant programs. I mean, a lot of things end up, the longer it goes, a lot of things end up getting impacted. And so this could really be messy. It could impact whether we're going to get a farm bill or not. Likely not. So we'll all be tracking it. And if anybody else wants to jump in with any thoughts on appropriations, the shutdown, the farm bill, please feel free. I wanted to just give a really quick update on some marker bills that we worked on with Regenerate America, and just give a little quick status of those bills. So the first one was a Soil Care Act. It was a farmer to farmer training, largely through NRCS programs and those technical service providers around soil health, but not just around soil health, biological soil health management with a focus on regenerative agriculture. And that was introduced in the last Congress, and right now Senator Merkley wants to reintroduce it in the Senate, but we don't have a GOP co-sponsor. So that is something we really would like to get passed. We also hear lots of things around NRCS doing a lot of internal work. It's kind of a bit of a black box, even with our connections through that administration. We aren't really hearing what's going on, but we're hearing things like, oh, they're going to move towards like outcomes-based approaches in NRCS and going to do all this training. So that remains a little bit of a black box. But if anybody has any ideas for GOP co-sponsors on the Soil Care Act, please let us know. The streamlining conservation practice standards, sorry, that's meant to be on one line. Streamlining Conservation Practice Standards Act, that has been reintroduced. That was in last time in, thanks to Callie, that was actually included in the Senate version of their, I think it was actually in both House and Senate versions. And then and that is basically to make it a process with more farmer input, more research, to get good ideas to be able to become practice standards and really streamline that process so we can make good practices around regenerative agriculture be able to be funded through like EQIP and CSP programs. And then finally, the Farmer to Farmer Education Act, that was also reintroduced. We had sort of a similar bill to that was introduced. And we ended up kind of shifting our focus towards Farmer to Farmer, which was being championed by American Farmland Trust and National Young Farmers Coalition. So we're really great to see Marshall. Yeah, that would be great. I don't have a connection with that office anymore. I don't know if Tucker's still there, but we should chat, Callie, because we would love to get the Soil Care Act reintroduced again. We also supported so many other marker bills, and Land Court does such a great job with their soil health tracker. I think there have been over 30 core soil health bills reintroduced that were bipartisan this Congress, meaning this year. And so, yeah, it's just great to see that there's a bunch of research bills and practice focused bills, and really great to see that there's momentum there. So RPI wants to be continuing to support these kind of bills, but we also, as Aisha said, amplifying, policies and sign-ons from partners. So we want to be like amplifying the work out there as much as possible. We may develop some of our own letters. We also, we started this with Regenerate America, but really would like to also continue to exploring supporting state legislation. We have Colorado in the house here today, but if there's other state legislation around regenerative agriculture and soil health, we'd love to also help support that. I think it's back to you, Jessica, unless anyone wants to jump in and just share any thoughts right now, like on the Farm Bill or appropriations, or plug for any marker bills that you're working on.
Also, just to tap into what Erica mentioned around the state work, that's something that Finn and I did. So, did some one-offs here. We obviously were part of the CDFA process that just wrapped up last January. So that was great. And then leverage that we also did some work in Colorado, which unfortunately didn't move forward. And we've been around regenerative definitions. And we've been told that with the massive budget deficit because of the federal actions, Colorado, no appetite, which is fine. We are talking to Judith McCreary in Texas. The Texas legislature only meets every other year, so that's fun. But there was a lot of interest in a couple of bills that would have made it, but in Texas, at midnight on whatever day this legislation ends, if it's not done, it's not done. But talking about doing some more education, because there is interest to regen. So if there's a way that's maybe not directly legislation, but doing some education. We're going to be working with SCA does a lot of work with Farmers Footprint. They're amazing storytellers. We've been talking with them about maybe putting together a video package of a bunch of interviews they did with farmers for us over the summer that we could send to Congress, but that would also be applicable at a state level. So if there's any interest that we can spark at state level, let us know for tracking and for how we can engage and support those little sparkies. So, and then, okay, so then with that, you guys listen to us talk. We appreciate that. Thank you. But we want to know how, the baseline of everything that we do with SCA, and which is so aligned with In Common, is supporting the work of others, elevating, giving the tools. So and this is a standing question. This is not like if you don't answer it right now, you never ever get to answer it again. We want to know, how can we best support your work and your goals? Pressing issues, obviously the federal government reopening is kind of number one in this space. But if there's other pieces, and just thinking about the structure to best, be as useful as possible. As we said, for probably the next 6 months, we're going to do these monthly calls for quick updates. If we ever need to do an emergency webinar because something hopefully really cool has happened, stay tuned. If you ever miss something, there's always recordings, there's always notes. where the goal is not to, the goal is to make sure we all know the same things. So would just love to open it up for thoughts, for sharing, for anything that you want to make sure to flag for this group in this time that we have together right now. And if anybody wants to rant, I can stop the recording too. So go for it, Sandy.
Well, thank you for that. This is helpful I love that this work is continuing for sure. And I've struggled a little bit trying to figure out where exactly I fit in, but as you can probably tell from my introduction, I'm involved in the composting pieces of this quite heavily at a lot of different levels. And I was just starting to draft an email to, because we're putting agendas together for our next Legislative and Environmental Affairs Committee meeting at the United States Composting Council, and I would love to invite you all to come and talk to that group at some point. Or
it.
at least a couple of you to talk about the RPI and the change from RA to you guys and or the switch over, the shifting, whatever you want to call it. So I just wanted to basically extend an invitation. I don't know when that will happen, but I am offering up to do a little quick update myself at our next meeting, which is actually on October 13th, but we meet every month. So if that's something that you, Jessica and or Aisha or Erica might be willing to do, I would love to put you all in touch with our team that puts together those meetings for us. So you think that'd be helpful to come and join the USCC's legislative group and talk about these things? Because there's a lot of crossover, as you might imagine. So
yeah, absolutely. Connect us, and between the three of us, we'll figure out whenever the next meeting is, who can attend. So
yeah, perfect. I will
amazing.
give a little update this month, and then we'll figure out what happens after that. So
fabulous.
thank you.
Perry, I'm going to put you on the spot and just ask if you're hearing anything that might be bubbling in California that we need to have on our radar.
No, I really have not been looking so closely at that, and I apologize. The thing that comes to mind for me this morning is that I just attended a 2-hour event on the indicators report of sustainable San Mateo County. And it was really interesting, but the whole focus of it was plant-based diets. I have no objection to plant-based diet other than the concept is not defined clearly, and there is just such incredible pushback against quote unquote regenerative agriculture. And I find it really problematic because I don't see any reason that eating a vegan or a vegetarian diet, I see no reason why that and regenerative agriculture cannot be reconciled, and why it would be impossible for someone to support soil health. The only thing I hear about is cows, 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 and the literature that was being handed out is so, in my mind, damaging to what consumers believe about food and what's good for the planet. I don't think we can cut down all the rainforests, but I think you get my point. I'm just kind of ranting.
No. So it's really interesting. I actually used to do a lot of work with the Plant-Based Foods Institute and the Plant-Based Foods Association. And end of last year, and I have no idea if it's connected to the election or not, but end of last year, they really seemed to make a shift in terms of just the only thing to advocate for is plant-based. It doesn't matter how it hits the market. It doesn't matter. It's plant-based, 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 and not looking at the sourcing. And I think it's really interesting. And, you're absolutely right. Your soy milk can be regeneratively grown. Your tempeh can be regeneratively grown, like all of these great things. So it's a really interesting position. And then at the same time, and we'll talk about this more in future calls, but looking at the MAHA policy report, they all call for us to eat more beef, which I'm a carnivore, so I'm pretty jazzed about that. But we want regenerative beef because it's better for you, it's better for the environment, and it tastes better. So lots of pieces to look at, and folks that we would love to bring into this work if they're interested.
Sure. Well, I just a follow up to that is, if I am out there talking to consumers, whether as part of Climate Reality in a program that I'm delivering or just having conversations, I need to really be able to bridge that and connect people with things. And I can talk to them about sourcing and, I guess I'm just struggling with how I am going to position myself moving forward, because I really had to gird myself this morning, not to say the wrong thing, only to say what I knew was safe to say.
Yeah.
Without offending, but also with telling the story of regenerative.
Yeah, definitely. And that's something Perry will also, and I can drop these links in for you. That's also something we will be exploring in November. Middle of November, we will have the Soil Climate Alliance has a fall virtual meeting that we will be diving into those issues. So if you want to dive a little bit more into the broader regenerative space and sort of see how it can impact, we'll also be diving into on-farm economics. We'll be diving into nutrient density. There'll be a lot of, the different entry points for this work and how we can all come together. So love to have people join us.
I'm wondering if I can put Callie on the spot for a minute with a question. You know, I'm curious if, I mean, without naming your clients, if you could share maybe just a quick synopsis of what they're particularly interested in around regenerative agriculture. And are they really looking at, like, they want, changes for NRCS programs, or I'm really, yeah, just curious if you've had any conversations that you'd be able and willing to share, or not to, if it feels like too confidential, but obviously without naming who they are, or just even your pulse, just having been on the agriculture, committee as the conservation lead. Just love to hear your thoughts.
Sure. So I can share some kind of top of mind thoughts here. What I'm hearing both from my clients and I think from other folks in the company CPG space is where I'm approaching this, is that they're doing a lot of this work, or trying to source from farmers who are using regenerative practices. And it's incredibly challenging. And there's a lot of reasons for why that's challenging. And so we've had the conversation like, well, what if there were definitions and what if there were labels? Would that make it easier, kind of like in the organic space? And then that then raises concerns. Well, if that was the case, would it get more expensive? Would the paperwork be problematic? We look at organic and like the 3-year transition period, and the inability to source domestically, and especially in this political environment, sourcing domestically is extremely top of mind. Does this create is this going to be actually harder to find regenerative supply chains and farmers who are producing those? And so I don't have any specific marching orders that I'm following. It's more of take the pulse, what's going on. If there's a place to plug in, then let's plug in, but maybe there's not. Obviously, the political environment right now is incredibly unfriendly, though I will flag that there is I don't know the details, but there is some sort of regenerative program that has been written within NRCS. Again, I don't know the details, and I was just having coffee with someone this morning who is extremely well sourced in the agency, and even he was like, "No one will give me a copy of the plan." um, I think that it is well, together as we were hashing it out this morning, we think that it is probably just very likely that they would use existing equip dollars to carve out some sort of initiative. They're not going to be going to Congress to look to any additional authorities in this space. They would just be doing more of the same, putting certain labels on certain practices and then saying, here's a dedicated pot of funds for those. And then the other interesting piece of information is that this is kind of a play to keep Bobby Kennedy at bay. That there is a lot of concerns that he is trying to operate outside of his lane, and that the political folks at USDA, maybe including the secretary, I don't know, but they are not. Apparently, nobody's super thrilled with him right now, and they're developing, potentially implementing whatever this regenerative plan is, in order to say, no, 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 this is our space. You can go do your own vaccine stuff or whatever it is you're doing over there in your own lane. So that is kind of, those are the two things that are just very top of mind to me right now, and kind of what I'm hearing. Obviously, with shutdown, they're not allowed to roll out any new programs. And they have a huge percentage, maybe above 90% of their staff that's going to be furloughed. So, for all intents and purposes, they are locked down at NRCS, not USDA wide.
Callie, do you, and again, I know you didn't know a lot, but there was a regen definition in Biden's USDA. Any idea if they're using that, or are they gonna frame it their own way? Just curious if they mentioned
So,
anything.
I think that if it was created during the Biden administration, they would absolutely throw it away.
That's what I assumed.
Also, I mean, that's just politically, that's what they've done with
Yes.
everything else. Also, they might throw it away and then pick it up and change a couple words and then say, look at this amazing definition we have come up with.
Yeah. Which, fine, as long as it's right, I'll take it and go with it. But
yeah. I think it's interesting that when I've asked like two different people, hey, what's this regen plan? It is crickets. They
Oh
don't want to
yeah,
talk about it.
it's a black box. We've been hearing
Yeah.
the same. The only thing I did hear is that it's moving towards like outcomes based. So they're actually looking at systems
hmm
and I wouldn't be surprised if they're also really thinking about using, I mean, and this has sort of been in the plans for a while, but really trying to ramp up third party, TSPs, third party providers,
Yep.
and think, yeah, and how to use some of these, networks and associations out there to really help ramp up and expand regenerative agriculture. But yeah, I think that's a really interesting take, whether it's like this is really genuine, but nobody does seem to know, even some people that are like kind of insiders there. So given that, to
It
like,
could be an amazing opportunity, Erica.
yeah,
Like it
it
could
could
be
be.
fantastic.
It could
Yeah.
be amazing. And so we will continue to try to get intel. I would love to get a meeting with Jimmy Evans around this. And even though we know tons of people that he knows, I don't know him directly, but that may take a little bit, and they might be just keeping their cards close for now. So we may not learn anything anyway. Um, but given all of that, I mean, it seems like, marker bills have been continued to introduce. Probably won't have a farm bill this year, so maybe there'll be, some kind of extension again. But there are some bipartisan bills that are getting introduced, and that you have like the Maha caucus, like Senator Marshall that's heading that. There is a lot of talk about regenerative agriculture. So it seems like there could be more opportunities for bills, but I guess I just wonder, like, is introducing these bills or reintroducing, is it kind of in vain? Do we really think they have a chance of being in a farm bill eventually? Or should we like keep up the fight and keep, advocating and pushing for farm, marker bills?
I mean,
Big
I
question.
think, I think marker bills have a role, but I think it's limited. It's kind of like a check the box exercise. You have to have a marker bill in order to go to the committee, in order to technically have a member who is advocating for it. But then again, members introduce a lot of marker bills and they really only put their weight behind however many or ones that they actually want. Um, This is maybe not a very popular opinion, but I think when a farm bill finally passes this Congress, I think you can probably get a farm bill in the spring, maybe early summer. And I say that because I think Angie Craig is going to want to demonstrate that she can get a bill done as she goes into her Senate election in the fall. So I think it gets done sometime in 2026. That being said, I think they're going to not reinvent the wheel. I don't, at least as of like 2 weeks ago, Senate staff is not even talking about a farm bill and House is barely. And I think they're going to go back to the versions that they drafted in the last Congress and pick and choose from that. Like, for instance, if they wanted to do something on, Erica, you mentioned the conservation practice standards, they're probably going to make it easy on themselves and go back and look at what was previously drafted instead of starting from scratch. There will probably be some things that come in and out in order to get a bill done, but I don't think you're going to see a farm bill that is extremely different from the versions that we've seen before. So my unpopular opinion is it's probably too late to do anything that is really like groundbreaking in this space, and too late by a couple of years, like not even like a couple of months, and start thinking, what does this look like in the next Congress? And then how do we build that path outside of the typical folks that we all always talk to? And like, what does that larger community look like? Like, is there going to be a path where commodity crops could be evolved? Is there something in the crop insurance space? So that is challenging but like, that's an insurance space. Like, those people need to protect their investments. And so just like thinking about like, where else could you potentially be building up a big coalition, and so that you are and pulling together that larger kind of policy plan so that you're ready. Farm bills are built evolutionary so that you're laying a groundwork one farm bill and then you're implementing and actually getting it done the next farm bill. And that is over the I don't want to say how long I've been working on farm bills, but that's where a lot of success comes from. Like, kind of that long-term perspective and building up towards these bigger wins.
But when you said the next Congress, that would be 2027, right?
Yeah.
But
So it'd
then,
be theoretically after this farm bill, if I'm
right,
right. Yeah.
right. So if there's a farm bill early next year, and do you think that would be, I mean, that may not even be a full 5-year farm bill. Maybe they would but maybe they would do it for full 5 years. But
Yeah.
yeah, hard to
Maybe.
know.
Yeah.
So many unknowns, my goodness. Well, that's really helpful though. I mean, the big tent approach and really making allies is very important. Huh. All right.
Anything else? Susan, Dawn?
Yeah, I don't have anything in particular to add. Interesting to hear all this. Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons I am leaving CDA is because the Climate Smart Markets program they started was funded by the state, and as a after the CDA was the lead partner on a Climate Smart Commodities grant. Reimbursing producers for their regenerative practices. And it has time limited funding through next June. So hopefully it'll be re-upped, but I know Colorado, they want to do the right thing, but yeah, I also noted the deficit and wondered about refunding this in the current environment. But there is that tax credit that I put in the chat, which is, I think, of interest, especially for Colorado producers.
Mhm.
And you don't need to make income to get the tax credit, which is important.
That's
So that's
That's
about,
very interesting. Thanks for sharing that.
yeah, check it out. There's having some informational webinars and stuff coming up. And they did some work on definitions. It's really everybody just is doing a list of practices. And I mean, I don't really know how to do it better.
That's the worst way to do it. So we'll take it for now.
Yeah. And yeah, all the same pain points. And I have been working to try to get things to market, and yeah, all the familiar challenges. One thing that I did while I was there was partner with the Climate Collaborative and sponsor some Colorado companies to join their community of practice.
Oh, great.
Um,
They're members, so
yeah, so
know them well.
that seemed like a good thing to and I've just been knocking on doors and trying to make things happen, but the procurement and infrastructure issues and everything, there's a lot of things that need fixing, but I mean, you gotta start somewhere. And yeah, Mad Egg seems to be doing a lot of impactful things lately, which is heartening. So yeah, and Boulder also, I'm also in Boulder, so yeah, they have some innovative programs too. So yeah, I mean, we're gonna win and we're gonna make progress eventually. And incrementally is my thought. But yeah, if I hear anything, I'm happy to weigh in. It's helpful to just know what you guys are thinking about and working on. So thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Don, anything to drop into the conversation? Listening is also totally cool, but I will put you on the spot.
Since our coalition has meetings every month, we're pretty much up to date on the Farm Bill. I
Right.
agree with pretty much what everyone said. But there are so many problems the farmers are going to face this year. The USDA, Rollins just reported how much input costs have gone up just since 2020, over 30%. Insurance costs 73% increase. The trade deficit this year is forecast to be $50 billion. And remember back in 2020, it was 25 billion. And the government had to bail them out with our tax dollars. I don't know how they're going to bail out the 50 billion this year. And the farmers are, I don't know, they're under so much pressure. And regenerative agriculture can reduce the input cost so much. And so the one good news is regenerative agriculture, the knowledge among and use among farmers has grown. Its knowledge base is over 10% of the country now. Up to 70% are practicing no-till. The problem is the big egg companies are saying these farmers encourage in regen practices, but still using pesticides to kill the cover crops. I mean, that's not regenerative, as we know. So there's a lot of issues, and I hope this group can help educate the farmers. We are going to do that. We need to do that. The problems we face in the Midwest, for example, is the farmers are still encouraged to grow crops for the biomass fuel industry. None of that is good. Over 60–80% is non-food products, doesn't feed people, feeds animals and CAFOs. So those are the issues that we're kind of dealing with. And on a local level, on the Illinois farmers, we have over 50% of our farms are owned by large corporations. And they do practice some, they call it live harvest. I forget the name. They have it has some regenerative practices in it. So we're going to try to contact these large farm owners and try to see if they can encourage their leased farmers, the farmers who lease their land, to practice more regenerative agriculture than what they're doing now. So those are our focuses, both on a local level and a national level.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really good to hear. And figure out how to weave that into what we're talking about. So awesome. Erica, Aisha, anything else to drop into this conversation?
That's really helpful in general to kind of get a sense of what everyone is working on and things that are rising to the top for them. I think some things that we're going to keep paying attention to and bring in what has been shared today is, I mean, one thing that just comes to mind is the fact that the administration has a vision, but they don't have any strategy that they've really shared behind it. They have a lot of things that they're saying and a lot of actions that they're taking that are contradictory to reaching those goals. And so just kind of thinking through where we can, strategically and collaboratively leverage, folks in these networks to, say that, yeah, like if you want to, I mean, Susan, when you were talking about the work that's happening in Colorado around Boulder, one thing that I know GT has been banging the pot about is that these things should be happening at the local level. They should be locally led decisions. And so, bringing up examples of, what is happening at the local level that is funding and making these things possible, and seeing how the federal government and federal legislation can be beneficial to that versus counteracting it through so many things that have been defunded, or the cutting of staff at NRCS offices, or just some of these decisions where it's like, if you want to empower local decisions to be made and local communities to go towards healthier practices, then there are some fundamental things that need to happen at the federal level that, we just want to keep an eye on and, maybe kindly activate around. We know that it's not a good time to be highly defensive, that that's sort of playing on their terms to some extent. But just really like bringing together, so that's being farmer stories and farmer voices around what's really happening out in the field. Dawn, you mentioned the rising input costs, farm bankruptcies are up significantly this year. So there's a lot of stories that can be told that can really elevate and highlight the way that decisions are being made that are, yeah, just out of alignment with the stated goals of the administration. And we can, draw on our wealth of knowledge and resources and expertise to offer solutions if they're so willing to consider them and take them into consideration.
Awesome. Well, with that said, we filled the hour, which is fantastic. Stay tuned. I dropped the link for our the big November meeting as part of SCA in the chat. We will also be doing a more in-depth policy webinar, including Aria from Land Corps, Duncan and Jesse from NSAC, and Max Sano from Beyond Pesticides. So diving into more of these issues. Who knows what that conversation will focus on, because we don't know what the government's going to be doing by then, but really able to dig into some more of these issues then. Feel free to join us, feel free to share that. And otherwise, if things pop and you're like, oh, you want to make sure it's on our radar, or you need a resource or something, please ping me, Erica, Aisha, one of us, all three of us. We share all of, we work very, very closely, which I love. And so let us know how we can help you. And otherwise, stay hydrated, stay caffeinated, keep the snacks handy, and keep doing your amazing work.